Hi, I'm Charles with Handicap. The story begins as a guy named Alan completes a game. The game took 3 years to complete, but that is not enough for Alan. It's incredibly disappointing, and he says that it was just another weak sauce game. It was hot garbage, and Alan wishes that there was a game that took at least 10 years to beat. Alan decides not to waste any time, so he searches for exactly what he wants. In his search, he looks for a video game with garbage balancing, and he wants it to be hardcore. This leads him to a site that offers a game that never ends. Alan couldn't be more excited to get started, so he takes a look at the difficulty settings. There he finds the standard, easy, normal, and hard, but the final selection startles him. It's called Hell Mode, and its description is pretty vague. It says that regrets are the least of his worries, for he shall be faced with utter despair. Alan is a serious gamer, so he's not fazed by these words because he has heard them all before. He immediately selects the Hell Mode difficulty, and the game begins. There are a ton of character classes to choose from, and some of the options are Swordsman and Spear User. Alan takes an interest in the Demon Lord class, but there's one below it. It's the Summoner class, and Alan can only wonder why its difficulty rating is so high. Alan is looking for a challenge, so he selects Summoner, but the game says that the class is still in alpha testing. The game still allows him to choose it, so he says that he will be the game's guinea pig, and he will test the class. With all that out of the way, Alan is ready to play, so he presses the start button. This is no ordinary game though, so Alan is teleported inside of it. Moments later, a man tells his wife that she did a great job giving birth to their son. This baby is Alan, and he quickly determines that he must have just been reincarnated. Alan's father is glad to see that he's a healthy boy, and he welcomes Alan into this world. A while later, Alan is happily fed by his parents. As he eats, Alan thinks about how he used to be a 35-year-old uneducated, broke, romantically inept, white-collar worker. He has been reincarnated though, so now he's 1 year old. As a baby, he can't talk, but he can still think to himself and understand words. His parents are commoners, and they live in a frontier village. Here, people pay tax to a ruling lord to cultivate the land, so their village doesn't even have a name yet. Alan's father's name is Rodin, and he's a real family guy who works hard every single day. His mother is Theresia, and she's as sweet as can be. Alan is their only child, but his parents are very much in love, so he can tell that it won't be long before he has a sibling. That night, when left alone, Alan tries to open a status window. Of course, he's disappointed when nothing happens. Alan is enjoying his peaceful life, but he can't help but think about how he's supposed to be a summoner by now. Alan has tried to open his status window night after night for as long as he can remember, and it never works. Before going to sleep, Alan tries one more time, and he is shocked when a book appears. He screams out of shock, and that gets his parents' attention, so Alan hides the book immediately. Luckily, his parents don't see it, and they simply assume that Alan was talking in his sleep. After they leave, Alan summons the book again. He opens it this time, and he's excited to finally begin his time as a summoner. After an entire year of trying, he can finally see his stats, and there's a whole bunch more. His class is Summoner just like he selected, but the book also has a lot of information about the details of his summoning skills. The ones called Summon and Create have their own skill experience points, which means they will level up the more he uses them. Alan is delighted to see that he already has summons available, and they are the Insect Summon and Beast Summon. The letter H is next to both of them, so Alan wonders if this is their rank. Another page reveals a message that was left for Alan from the God of Creation. The message thanks Alan for helping them, and it apologizes for taking so long to get him this grimoire. Alan selected a class that is still under testing, so it took some time to finish the paperwork. This all seems okay, but the message also says that they don't accept any questions or cancellations in regards to class selection. Alan simply brushes it off because he's eager to start summoning stuff. He tries to summon an insect, but nothing happens. He tries saying the word summon insect a few different ways, but nothing works. There are no game facts or walkthroughs in this world, so Alan determines that he will have to really lock in. He has to figure this out himself, so he wonders if he has to use the create skill first. He says create insect this time, and something finally happens. Saying create insect creates a card, and a note says that one insect H rank card has been created. Alan is ready to use the card to actually summon the insect, but he hears a noise. It's his mother, so Alan has to pretend to be asleep again. Alan realizes that he won't be able to summon anything without being found out, so he will have to wait until tomorrow. Alan hates that he's actually getting pretty sleepy, so he curses this dumb, 1-year-old body of his. Alan falls asleep soon after, and his grimoire disappears. The next day, his parents work hard as they usually do, and Alan's mother helps him learn to walk. Eventually, he's left for his nap, but Alan has other plans. He brings out his grimoire and immediately summons the insect. This causes an immense amount of light to come pouring out of the book, and luckily his mother doesn't see it. Orbs of light now float around Alan, and he has no clue what's going on. Just then, the lights all converge on the book, and an insect comes out of it. The creature makes a strange noise as it hops around, and Alan points out that it's a giant grasshopper. He wonders if it will listen to his orders, so he instructs it to come towards him. Alan is still a baby, so he can barely formulate actual words, but the instructions are clear enough. Unfortunately, they're ineffective, as the grasshopper doesn't listen to him at all. Instead, it just goes in the opposite direction, so Alan determines that it's just a dumb bug. Alan looks for help inside of the grimoire, and he's delighted to see that it shows him the grasshopper's stats. Alan can even give it a formal name, so he names it Denka. Alan notices a section that is called buffs, and he wonders what it means. It says +1 endurance and +1 agility, but it doesn't seem to be affecting the grasshopper. Just then, Alan realizes something, so he goes to check on his own stats again. He's instantly amazed because the buffs are actually boosting his own stats. That is even more awesome than anything he could have imagined, so he yells out. Unfortunately, this gets his mother's attention, and she is horrified by the grasshopper. She immediately crushes it, and Alan can only cry out to his loyal companion Denka. After several days of toying around with his skills, Alan eventually moved on to creating the beast. It's a mouse, and he settled on the name Mousy. Mousy is dumb as rocks, just like Denka, but Alan can't complain. They aren't very smart, but they use their abilities whenever he tells them to. Mousy has the scurry ability, so whenever Alan tells him to use it, Mousy scurries around the room. As for Denka, his ability is called Hop. Alan has determined that this world is crawling with powerful monsters, and he knows that he won't be able to defeat any of them with his two little companions. Alan has also learned that he can stock up to 10 summon cards for each creature, and the most important thing is their buffs. For example, by stocking 10 of Mousy's cards, Alan's attack stat goes up by 10. Thanks to stacking so many of Mousy's cards, Alan can pack enough punch to easily surpass what any regular baby can do. Furthermore, the experience required to level up skills and characters in Hell mode is 100 times what it is in normal mode. Just then, Alan and his mother greet Rodin after he returns from a hunt. Rodin is a commoner, but when the cold season comes around, he goes monster hunting with the other men from the village. Rodin just defeated a wild boar, and he wants to know if Alan wants to see it. Alan can't even hide how excited he is, because this will be his first look at a real monster. Rodin then puts Alan on his shoulders, and the loving family says goodbye before parting ways. Alan gets his first look at what this world looks like outside of the house, and he is amazed. Rodin points at a flock of monsters, and he tells Alan that they're called Albarans. They flock together and head north at this time of year. They are monsters that signal the coming of fall, and Rodin reveals that he named Alan after them. For these monsters, the sky is the limit, and they can use their wings to fly wherever they want in the world. That is what freedom really is, and that is what Robin wants for Alan. Unfortunately, Rodin took a scolding from Theresia, but he knows that that's what he gets for naming their son after a monster. Eventually, they arrive at their destination, and Alan is amazed to see how big the boar is. It's terrifying to see up close, and Alan determines that he wouldn't be able to beat this thing in a fight. Just then, a guy named Gerda approaches Rodin. Gerda tells everyone that today's heavyweight champion has arrived, and all the other guys celebrate. They were only able to defeat the boar because of Rodin, but he's too humble, and he says that he just got lucky. Rodin tells Alan to introduce himself, so Alan formally gives his name. Gerda is stunned because Alan's only 1 year old, and he's already so civilized. Gerda's daughter is the same age, but she is still just talking nonsense like a normal baby. Alan wonders how strong these boars are, so Gerda explains that they are C-rank monsters. They are really tough, and it takes 20 guys to take one of them down. Alan listens very closely, and he's pleased to hear this information because it gives him a benchmark to determine the strength of the monsters. 10 months later, Alan screams in celebration as his create and summon abilities have reached level 2. He unlocks a couple other things as well, so Alan really begins to feel the gamer adrenaline rush. He immediately checks his stats and sees that he can now create G-rank creature cards. On top of that, he has gained a skill that fuses summons together, and his card inventory space has doubled. Of course, this means more cards, but most importantly, it means that he will get double the buffs. Also, now his grimoire has a note feature that reads his mind and writes down his thoughts. Alan is ready to fuse some stuff together, but he realizes that he doesn't have enough magic power. That night, Alan works hard to eat a lot of food so he can recover the magic power he used up. After dinner, Alan's ready to go to work. He tries to fuse Mousy 1 and Mousy 2, but nothing happens. It still says that he doesn't have enough magic power, but he just recovered it to his max. Alan can't do anything about this right now, so he decides to create a new summon card instead. He tries to create Beast G, but once again he's told that he doesn't have enough magic power. This means he can't fuse or create anything new with his current max magic power, so Alan blames it all on the Hell mode he selected. A while later, we see that Alan has turned 3 years old. He is still level 1, but his stats show that he has been stacking several buffs. Most of his natural stats are in the single digits, but his buffs add 10 and 20 points above that. He now has a beast called Molly, and he's able to fuse it with Hopper. This creates a Bird G card, and gives Alan +2 agility and +2 intelligence. Alan names the bird Chappie, and he summons it immediately. Chappie has the voice mimic ability, and Alan is amazed when the bird makes a perfect imitation of his voice. This will be really useful for tricking enemies, so Alan looks forward to using it. Alan then summons all his creatures, and has them use their abilities. He instructs Hopper to use Provoke, so the frog begins jumping. This will serve as a good distraction on the battlefield, so Alan turns to Molly next. He tells it to use Dig, so Molly digs a giant hole in the ground. This will be great for creating traps, so he tells Molly that he did a good job. These are all the G-rank summons Alan learned a while ago, and he's pleased with how useful they are. Alan then recites his motto, which is that if you dominate the stats, then you dominate the game. The key to becoming a great summoner is knowing all about the various stat buffs of all his creatures. There is so much depth and complexity in being a summoner in this game, so Alan declares that this is what hardcore gaming is all about. Just then, Alan falls into the hole, and he is reminded that he probably isn't ready to fight monsters anytime soon. A bell sounds in the distance, which means it's 3 o'clock. Alan dreads this time of day because something terrible happens. A girl calls out to him, and we see that it's his neighbor named Krenna. Alan declares that he is Alan the Honorable, and Krenna declares that she is Krenna the Fierce. She challenges Alan to a duel, and he eagerly accepts. This couldn't be any less cool in Alan's eyes, but he knows that he has to take these play fights with Krenna seriously. If he doesn't act like a normal kid, Alan fears that his secret might be found out. He immediately jumps into battle with Krenna, but he's surprised by how fast she is. Alan poured all his creature buffs into agility, and still he can barely keep up with Krenna. Eventually, her immense attacking pressure overwhelms Alan, and she shatters his sword. He says that she's too overpowered, but Krenna declares that she's just getting started. Afterwards, Alan's parents see that Krenna came to play with Alan. She declares that she just finished dueling him, and Theresia points out that it's getting dark outside. Krenna decides to go home, and we see that Alan hasn't been able to move after being defeated. Theresia is pregnant again, so Alan helps her carry her bags. That night, Alan tells his parents that he wants to help them harvest food because Theresia has a big tummy now. His parents are surprised, but Alan assures them that he can do it. Alan thinks about how he has the stamina of a full-grown adult now, so he can definitely help. Theresia says that kids like Alan shouldn't have to work, so he should just keep playing with Krenna. Rodin agrees with her, as he points out that Alan already helps enough inside the house. Alan tries to insist, but he's shot down again. Rodin points out that Alan will end up doing it eventually, so he should just enjoy life without farm work while he can. This reminds Alan that their family will be commoners forever, and he will eventually grow up to help them. Also, working the farms is on a different level from house chores, and it's really grueling stuff. His parents are right to tell him to wait, because Alan wouldn't wish that kind of work on his 3-year-old son either. Alan agrees to wait, so his parents are delighted to hear that. Just then, Theresia says that she has noticed that Alan has been throwing rocks at a tree out back the past few days. She wonders why, so Alan reminds his parents that they told him that there are monsters in the forest outside the house. There's no telling what they will do, so Alan vows to protect his mom from the monsters with the rocks. His parents think it's adorable, but deep down Alan knows that this isn't the truth. In reality, he was only doing it to see if he could learn skills aside from summoning. Alan's parents then bring up how much they enjoy watching Alan duel against Krenna. They always look like they're having so much fun, and Rodin can't wait for their appraisal ceremony. Alan doesn't know what that is, so they explain that it's something that will happen when he turns 5 years old. It's a divine ceremony, and it will determine what kind of talent Alan has. With any luck, they say that a good talent will help Alan break out of the commoner life. Alan has high hopes for this day, and he very much looks forward to it. A while later, Alan sees that Denk is still bouncing like a champ in the snow. He was testing something, and now he knows that he can summon a creature for a whole day without any problems. Just then, Krenna arrives, and they jump into battle. Alan is at a severe disadvantage because he's a summoner, and Krenna wins once again. Roden arrives to greet his family, and he sees that Alan was knocked out again. Just then, Theresia is shocked as Denka jumps on her leg. She falls over, and Alan only now realizes that he left Denka out. Thankfully, Theresia is okay, but everyone panics as she's ready to give birth. Roden sends Krenna to get her mother, so she rushes off. Alan desperately tries to warm up some water, and he begins to wish that he played a birthing sim before coming to this world. The water's ready, so Alan wonders what's next, but Roden can't remember. The guys begin to panic even more, but thankfully Krenna's parents arrive. Krenna's mother tells the guys to let the girls handle this, and she kicks them all out of the room. Hours later, the boys return to the room to see that everything went well, and the family's second child has been born. It's another boy, so Roden names him Mash. Theresia loves it, but first she wants to make sure that it's not another name Roden took from a monster. Roden can't deny it, but Theresia surprisingly laughs. She still loves the name, and everyone celebrates. As Alan watches them, he can't help but wonder why he was reincarnated. At first, he just wanted to play a hardcore game with garbage balancing, but he realizes something now. He was broke, uneducated, romantically inept, and a totally average Joe, so he is not sad to leave his past life behind. There's nothing to hold him back now, so he's going to hoard the best equipment and max out every one of his stats. Alan's parents call him over to say hello to his brother, so Alan welcomes Mash to this world. As he looks at everyone, Alan can't help but admit that this family stuff is pretty nice. Alan makes his brother cry by accident, but his parents tell him it's okay because he cried way louder when he was born. Alan is much happier than he thought he would be in this world, and he has come to a decision. He's not exactly sure how he will pull it off, but he wants to free his family from the drudgery of the commoner life. A while later, Alan wonders what the appraisal ceremony will be like. Roden explains that it's a special event that everyone has to participate in when they turn 5 years old. If it turns out that Alan has a talent, then he might be able to rise out of the commoner life. The only catch though is that being talented will also mean that he will have rivals. When the people first settled in this area, they started making lots of babies, so there are a lot of kids turning 5 years old at the same time as Alan. Krenna is one of them, and she joins our hero as he heads to the ceremony. When they arrive, Alan's surprised to see how well dressed the other kids are, and he wonders if they're all commoners. Alan and his family are a lower class called serfs, so the other villagers look down on them. Soon they're greeted by the priests, who say that they owe everything to Elmia, the god of creation. People come from all walks of life, but Elmia blesses everyone equally, with great opportunity. This country has even seen heroes whose lineage can be traced back to serfdom. The villagers can't believe that some legendary heroes came from such a low class, but it makes Alan hopeful. He remembers reading something about this before entering the game, and now it makes sense why everyone has to go through the ceremony. Inside, Alan sees the statues of the gods that are worshipped in this church. One of them is Elmia, and Alan remembers that this person was the one that sent him a letter. The appraisal ceremony begins, and the first kid to be called up is named Palomas. The priest explains that by placing his hand on this crystal ball, any talent and attributes they have will be inscribed on a metal plate. Paloma goes to touch the crystal, and his father tells him that he will be fine. Paloma's stats are shown on the metal plate, and Alan notices that it looks like the stats page that he sees in his grimoire. The priest declares that Paloma has the talent to be a merchant, and Paloma's father says that it's great news. He thanks the heavens, so Alan determines that having any talent at all is cause for celebration. Alan notices that attributes get displayed with ranks instead of numbers, and his grimoire makes note of it. He has his grimoire out in front of everyone, but it's because he learned that no one else can see it. The next kid ends up crying to his parents because nothing happens when he touches the crystal ball, and this makes it clear that not everyone gets a talent. Another kid named Dagora gets the Axe Wielder talent, and it's the first A-rank attribute they've seen. Several hours later, all the kids have been appraised, and only Alan and Krenna are left. Krenna goes to take the test, and everyone's shocked when the crystal ball begins to grow brighter than any other time. Her father can only wonder what it means, and the priest says it's a miracle. Krenna has the talent called Sword Lord, and it's one of the best talents that exist. Gerda says that she hit the jackpot with the Sword Lord talent, but Krenna's disappointed because she wanted the Swordsman one. This is even better though, so Gerda celebrates. Alan figured that she would have a great talent because it's the only way to justify how ridiculously OP she is in their sword fights. It's Alan's turn now, and he's relieved because this assessment will show his parents that he's a summoner, and he won't have to keep hiding it. This time, the crystal ball shines even brighter, and the force it puts out knocks Alan back. Roden eagerly wants to hear what kind of talent Alan has, but everyone is shocked as the priest says that he doesn't have one. Alan can't believe it, because he should at least have something, but the results are clear. Instead of showing a talent, it just shows a bunch of random letters, and Alan wonders if this is some kind of glitch in the game. He blames the game developers and says that Elmia, the supposed god of creation, should learn how to debug his game. This means that no one will know that he's a summoner, but he's surprised by Rodin. Rodin says that it's okay that he has no talent, and they head home. His parents tell him that talents don't matter, and Alan will always be their pride and joy. Alan thinks about how his family doesn't have much, and they don't even have a bathtub to bathe in. They're looked down on for being poor, but Alan says that he's still happy he was born into such a loving family. That night, Alan goes over everything he learned. All his attributes are E rank, and today he learned that he's the only one in this entire world playing on Hell mode. Everyone at the appraisal ceremony was 5 years old, which means they should all be a level 1 like him. The ranking system probably affects the amount of growth that they can accept whenever they level up. The only thing that can explain why all his attributes are E rank is because the progress in Hell mode is 100 times harder than normal. This also means that his attributes only show 100th of what his actual ranks are. Alan was stuck in a loop of playing weak sauce games, and now he entered the most difficult game ever. Most people would give up, but Alan is determined to prove to everyone that hardcore gaming is where it's at. Those random letters instead of a talent were clearly a glitch, so Alan decides to write some angry letters to the dev team. Later, Alan and his family go to Krenna's celebration. Krenna learned that Sword Lord is even better than the swordsman talent, which means that she's going to be even stronger. The chief of the village gave them some celebratory liquor, but Rodin has been acting strangely all day. He tells Gerda to enjoy the alcohol, but he's clearly bothered by something. Alan wonders if he's jealous about Krenna getting the Sword Lord talent instead of him, but Alan knows that his father isn't that petty. Gerda refuses to drink while Rodin's upset, and the truth finally comes out. Rhoda told Gerda earlier that his family will be cutting ties with them, and Gerda demands to know why. Rodin says that it's not what he wants to do, but it's something they have to do for Krenna. Her talent is extraordinary, and she might even end up joining the knighthood to serve their country. There's a good chance she can even become nobility, so people with her talent shouldn't waste their time socializing with serfs. The two guys begin to argue, and Alan wonders if he should do something. He tells Krenna to calm them down, but the wives have it taken care of. They use brute force to end the argument, and they tell Alan that the two guys always butt heads like this. They have been friends for the longest time, and they used to be hotheads who threw punches at each other all the time. The four of them are actually childhood friends, and they grew up in the same village. They heard that a new village was being built, so they all agreed to join the effort. Their houses even have the same design, and the two guys built them with their own hands. Rodin and Gerda calm down as they talk about construction, and they drink the celebratory liquor. A few days later, Gerda's shocked as he learns that the Order of Knights are coming to see Krenna. Everyone gathers in the village to see the knights, and they can't believe they're coming for Krenna because she's just a kid. Alan is also impressed because it seems that word is starting to spread about her incredible talent. The kid named Dagora arrives, and Alan notices that he's really leaning into his axe talent by carrying a giant stick around. Dagora wonders what Alan is doing here, and he says that talentless losers have no place here. Krenna defends him by saying that Alan is strong, but Dagora points out that all of Alan's ranks were E. Just then the knights arrive, and even the knight captain is here. His name is Zenoff, and he's a swordmaster. Krenna is called to meet with them, and Alan can tell that she's beyond excited. It's been 3 years since they first started playing knights, and now she's meeting the real thing. She introduces herself to Zenoff, and Alan wonders if them being here means that she will become a knight now. Gerda's worried, as he points out that Krenna's only 5 years old, and she hasn't even touched a real sword before. Zenoff says it doesn't matter as long as she has the Sword Lord talent, and he begins to wonder if they're lying. Things become very tense, and Alan can sense that something isn't right. Zenoff explains that falsifying the results of the appraisal ceremony is punishable by death. This is a very serious matter, and they must determine if Krenna's talent as a Sword Lord is legitimate. There's only one way to confirm, and Zenoff shocks everyone as he reveals that they will hold a fencing duel. Alan wonders if he heard this guy right, and Gerda begs him to have mercy because Krenna's only a child. Zenoff refuses and says that she must fight, or her and her entire family will be eliminated on the spot. Everyone is horrified to hear this, and Alan thinks about how this isn't fair at all. Unlike everyone else, Krenna isn't worried. A knight brings her a sword, and she's just excited to use a real one for the first time. She tells Gerda that she will be fine, and not even he can believe how calm she is. Krenna prepares for her duel that will determine the fate of her entire family, but she isn't worried at all. Instead, she introduces herself as Krenna the Knight, and she challenges her opponent. Her opponent, named Lebrand, has the spear talent, and he accepts her challenge. Their duel begins, and everyone's amazed as Krenna is able to use a sword that's nearly as tall as her. Alan analyzes the fight closely and thinks about how Krenna's sword mastery skill should be about level 5 thanks to their daily play fighting. That's pretty good for someone her age, but he isn't sure how much that will help her against the knight. The battle intensifies, and Gerda fears for Krenna's life as she's pushed back. The knight doesn't hold back one bit when he finds an opening in her attack, and he sends her crashing into a wall. Gerda wants to go to his daughter, but the knights hold him back. Krenna's in really bad shape, and we see that Alan is being held back as well. Alan thinks about how Krenna may be a sword lord, but adults still have an advantage in skill and level. This fight isn't even close to being fair, but everyone goes completely silent when something begins to happen. Some kind of power begins flowing out of Krenna, and she almost becomes a different person as she charges back into the fight. The smile is completely gone from her face, and she begins to dominate the battle. The knight determines that this has to be an extra skill, and he's quickly overwhelmed. Krenna is even able to destroy his sword, so Zenoff declares that the duel is over. Krenna is surprised to hear that they're done already, and she happily thanks Lebrand for the battle. He's completely defeated, and everyone cheers for Krenna. She's the real deal sword lord, so Gerda proudly says that that's his daughter. Zenoff says that there's no refuting Krenna's talent, and he commends Gerda for raising a sword lord. Krenna has a marvelous talent, so he apologizes for doubting them. Zenoff would like to discuss her future, but Gerda doesn't know if he can trust the knights. Zenoff tells him that he can bring his friends if it would make him more comfortable, so Gerda invites Rodin and his family. They all meet at the village chief's house, and there are more people here than Alan expected. It makes sense for the chief's son to be here, but Alan wonders why the kid with the axe is here as well. Zenoff formally introduces himself and explains that he was sent here to determine whether a true sword lord was among them. The answer is now very clear, and this means that there will be some big changes. This village was set to be named after the chief once it was fully established, but now that they know that a sword lord has been born here, the king wants something else. The king has decided that they should honor this momentous occasion by naming the village Krenna Village. Gerda can't believe this, and the chief happily agrees. Zenoff explains that 3 years back, there was a sword lord born from a noble family. Alan can immediately tell that there's something wrong with this, because in this game, a sword lord can only be born in the serf, commoner, and baron social classes. Zenoff says that this sword lord went on to serve the royal family, but he failed to meet expectations. This led to a reappraisal, and they found that this guy was actually just an ordinary swordsman. Afterwards, it was discovered that numerous members of nobility had exaggerated their talents. Because of this, the kingdom has made it a point to thoroughly verify all results. Zenoff apologizes again for having to test Krenna, and he tells Gerda to keep helping her flourish as a sword lord. When she reaches the age of 12, she can go study at the academy and eventually serve directly under the royal family. Dagora wonders if anyone that goes to the academy can become a knight, but his father must apologize for his son's lack of manners. Zenoff explains that at some point an instructor will be dispatched to this village, so Dagora should do his best to study and earn admission into the academy. Krenna says that Alan should study with them, but Dagora says that Alan can't study himself out of a paper bag. Alan can't believe that these kids are arguing over his intelligence, because little do they know that he's actually 40 years old outside of the game. Zenoff notices that Alan has dark eyes and dark hair, so he wonders who he is. Rodin explains that Alan is his son, and Gerda introduces them. Zenoff immediately recognizes Rodin the boar hunter, and he apologizes for not recognizing him sooner. He says that Rodin is a village legend, but Rodin doesn't even know why this guy knows his name. It turns out that the Baron is most fond of the great boar meat that is supplied by this village. From what they heard, Rodin is the man responsible for taking on the most dangerous role in the hunts. This is praise from the Baron himself, so Alan says that his dad is a superstar. After they part ways, Rodin says that Krenna will probably be a knight one day. What Zenoff also said proves that serfs like Rodin the boar hunter can get recognized by the big shots. Rodin says that they should always keep working because you never know what good will come from it. Alan agrees, and he knows this better than anyone, playing this game in hell mode. Just then, Alan reveals that he snuck out some of the food from the dinner so he could give it to his mom and Mash. He wonders if that was a bad thing to do, but Rodin reveals that he did the same thing. A while later, Alan yells in excitement because he finally leveled up his summon skill. He now has the enhanced skill, and he wonders if this means that he can make his summon stronger. Alan also unlocked F-rank creatures, but he still has to fuse them together to get new ones. Alan wonders what type he got this time, and he hopes that he got something like a dragon. To top it all off, Alan's inventory space went up from 20 to 30, and that means he will be able to get even more buffs from his monsters. It's been 2 entire years since he last leveled up his summon skill, but that's just how it goes when you play a game at the hardest difficulty. That night, Alan cleans up after dinner before getting ready to experiment with his new skills. He notices that the scar Rodin used to have on his arm is gone, so Rodin explains what happened earlier. During today's boar hunt, Rodin passed something called the Trial of the Gods. The Trial of the Gods is a special moment that happens occasionally during a hunt. The hunter feels a sudden burst of energy that gets rid of all their wounds and exhaustion. This sounds familiar to Alan, so he determines that this is how the people in this world describe the feeling they get when they're actually just leveling up. Alan can't see his father's stats, but he's a battle-hardened warrior, and he's sure that Rodin must be a pretty high level by now. Even though Alan's summon skill went up, he's still just level 1, and he isn't even close to leveling up. He has no experience points at all, and he knows that he's never going to get any unless he starts beating some monsters. The problem is that serfs like him and his family can't leave the village without permission. The only exception is for hunting, so Alan says that he would like to join a hunt with his father. Rodin refuses, as he points out that hunting isn't a game. It's incredibly dangerous, and people can even lose their lives. That night, Alan sees that he's received another message from Elmia, the god of creation. They fixed the glitchy text from the appraisal ceremony, and this message shows his real appraisal results. Instead of all his stats being E rank, they are much higher. Most of his attributes like attack and HP are either A rank or C rank, while he has S rank for magic power and intelligence. This is obviously a much better result, and Alan even has the same amount of S, A, B, and C ranks as Krenna. His life has been an utter grind, but these results make it all worth it. It's finally time to experiment with his powers, so Alan starts by using Enhance on Denka. Alan finds that it boosts the stats of the creature itself, especially the same 2 stats that it gives buffs for. Unfortunately, it looks like enhancing creatures doesn't actually affect his buffs. Alan summons Denka to see what it looks like now, and he can immediately tell the difference. It's not much bigger, but it definitely looks like Denka has been enhanced. This proves to Alan that there's more to being a summoner than just bringing out the biggest and baddest monsters. After going through a cycle of summoning and unsummoning, Alan learned that the enhancements on a card don't go away. This means that as long as he has the magic power to spare, Alan can enhance all the cards in his inventory. Alan has been testing all the various combinations for his fusion skill, but he still hasn't been able to unlock the new type. There's only one possibility left, so he tries to fuse together Insect F and Bird F. This surprisingly works, but Alan is disappointed when he sees that the card just says Grass. It's pretty confusing, and he wonders how Grass is a summonable creature type. Alan is delighted, however, when he sees what buffs he gets from this card. It gives a magic power buff that increases his magic power from 7 to 12. Having this buff means that Alan can do way more stuff over the course of the day without having to wait as long for his magic power to recover. Alan always feared that it would take him decades to level up, but this gives him hope that he can level up sooner. Alan summons it to see what it can do, and he's surprised by the little apple creature that appears. Alan names it Appo, and it's pretty clear to him that this little guy was not made for fighting. Appo pulls out his own status page and shows Alan that its ability is called Aroma. Alan tells Appo to use the ability, and he's confused when the little apple just plants itself in the ground. The sapling that grows out of it does kind of smell like an essential oil, and Alan's delighted by the smell. Alan imagines having a beautiful garden, but he quickly reminds himself that he isn't an isekai gardener. Just then Alan's mother arrives, and Alan can't get Appo to turn back into a card. Luckily, she doesn't think much of it, and just likes the smell. Alan can't help but wonder what Appo's deal is, and he questions if Appo has any use outside of his buffs. Later, Alan spars with Krenna, and he's quickly reminded that he still can't compete with her. Krenna, however, points out that he seems tougher now, and Alan realizes that his sword mastery skill is all the way at level 3. His inventory expansion also gave him more space to buff his endurance and attack, so he's a more formidable fighter now. Alan wonders if Appo's aroma skill has any effect in battle, but it doesn't seem like it. Just then, Alan remembers that his Phyto Summon has an attack skill called Chomp, and he wants to test it out. He doesn't want to use it on a human though, so it will have to wait. Afterwards, Alan continues, throwing stones at the tree behind the house. He has thrown at it at least 20,000 times by now, but there's no sign of his skill leveling up. Alan doesn't have much time either, because he has to look after Mash and help his mom with chores because she's pregnant again. Alan determines that he has to stop trying to learn other skills and just focus on increasing his summon level instead. He's ready to give up on learning the throw skill, but he can't help himself. He feels like he's just one toss away from leveling up, and this feeling makes it impossible for him to quit. Just then, Alan notices that some plants are starting to grow around the house, and it's like they have a garden now. Alan figured out a few things from testing, so he explains what Appo's skill does. Appo's aroma skill can shorten magic power recovery time from 6 hours to 5. This allows Alan to do even more daily activities, but all his responsibilities make him feel like he never has enough time. That night, Alan wonders why his father's taking so long to get back from today's hunt. He hears yelling in the distance, and he runs outside to find that his father has been injured. Roden's in terrible shape because they took a boar fang right to the gut. The wound is gruesome, and Alan can tell that the other warriors had no choice but to cauterize it. Gerda explains that they just barely managed to keep Roden alive by using a healing herb. It's called the Merle's flower, and Theresia can only wonder how they had such a valuable herb. It's incredibly expensive, but Gerda explains that he was given gold coins by the Knight Captain as an apology. He says that they're very lucky because Roden wouldn't be alive right now if it wasn't for the flower. The other hunters are furious as they blame a certain commoner for what happened, and they have had enough. Their anger isn't helping, so Gerda tells everyone to give Roden and his family some peace. Alan wonders what this commoner had to do with this, so Gerda explains. The chief told the hunters that he wanted commoners to join them on their boar hunts. Boar meat is very valuable, and it's hard to come by. Most of it gets sent to the Baron, and the leftovers are split between the hunters. The hunts are incredibly dangerous, and the hunters suffer many casualties every year, so commoners never volunteer themselves to join. Serfs, on the other hand, hunt as much as they can, because it's how they make a living. This last hunt was different, because some commoners actually volunteered. They heard talk of a hero among the serfs, so they wanted to see this hero firsthand. Zerov called Roden a hero in front of everyone, and that became like an official endorsement. Everyone assumed that commoners would be safe to join the hunt as long as the hero Roden was around. Roden and Gerda didn't like the idea of commoners joining the hunt, but they couldn't refuse the chief's decision. To make things worse, the commoners turned out to just be bums who wouldn't practice seriously. They never listened, and it was because they thought that being taught by serfs was beneath them. On the day of the hunt, the hunters gave the commoners the easiest job. They only needed to hold the bear's attention, but when the time came, they messed up badly. They threw the hunters' entire strategy out the window, so the hunters were forced to improvise. The hunt turned into total chaos, and Roden was injured when he rescued one of the commoners. Luckily, they were able to slay the boar, but Roden was the one to pay the price for having to protect the commoner. Alan is horrified to see his father this way, and he's really hard on himself. He calls himself a loser because he's only been focusing on himself and he hasn't really been helping anyone. The next morning, Alan says that he will take over watching Roden, but Theresia tells him that he needs to get some rest. Just then, Roden wakes up and everyone's glad to see that he's conscious. Alan, meanwhile, can only wonder what he's been doing this entire time. He has been totally preoccupied with powering himself up, but he wonders what good is power without purpose. Alan realizes now that for the people around him, this is not a game. It's a harsh world, and they're doing everything they can to survive in it. Gerda arrives to deliver Roden's share of the boar meat, and he tells the family that they have nothing to worry about. They're going to make sure that they're well taken care of over the winter, so Roden can focus on getting better. Alan also tells his father to leave everything to him, and he vows to keep their family safe. Alan has never been more serious, so everyone is shocked by his determination. These are not just empty words, as Alan takes over a lot of his father's responsibilities. He gets the water for the entire family, but the other men point out that he's putting too much in his buckets. Alan assures them that he will be fine, and he shocks them all by carrying so much. Alan has decided that it's time to drop the act because he will have to show some of his true power to take care of his family. This village already has an up-and-coming hero named Krenna, so it won't be a problem if a talentless serf like him draws a little more attention. From this day forward, Alan decided to pour every buff into his physical stats. This is a complete turn from what he was doing before, as he now ditches all his magic power stats. It was a tough decision, but Alan has determined that family comes first. Later, Alan goes to learn how to harvest potatoes. Gerda's the one teaching him, and he explains that Alan will have to use both hands to pull the potatoes up by the root. Alan amazes him when he's able to pull them with one hand, and Gerda realizes that Alan is much stronger than he thought. Alan says that he got it from his father, and he immediately gets to work. After Alan is done, he laments how the Baron will get half of everything, even though he did all the work. Just then, the village chief arrives, and he has brought the commoner to apologize. The guy says sorry, and he thanks Roden for saving him. Alan thinks about how an apology won't help anything, but Roden is much more forgiving. He tells the guy to be more careful next time, and Alan is in awe of his father. Theresia is hard on the guy, as she points out that Roden nearly lost his life because of him. She points out that everyone has a family to go back to, regardless of their social class, so she tells him to keep that in mind. The other hunters arrive, and they're all glad to see that Roden is doing much better. Some of them even want him to join them on their next hunt, so Theresia must tell them that Roden is still recovering. A while later, Alan clears some space in a field to test something out. He summons a bunch of his frogs and sets up a little trap. He has the frogs use their provoke ability, and Alan patiently waits nearby. He knows that this trap is pretty cliche, but it might be able to get him some wild birds that will help his family survive the winter. Unfortunately, nothing comes, so Alan wonders if the range of the skill is not wide enough. He's ready to go back to the drawing board to come up with a new plan, but he's shocked when a wild bird finally appears. This bird ends up being way tougher than he expected, as it completely destroys his trap. It starts wiping out all the frogs, and Alan realizes that this bird is an albaheron. Alan thought the skill would attract a few small birds, so he's horrified to see that it actually brought a B-rank monster. This bird that he was named after looks pretty tough, so Alan decides to just run away from it. Just then, Alan remembers that his enhanced skill is up to level 2 now. That can boost his creature stats from plus 10 to plus 20, and he already enhanced every summon in his entire inventory. If there were ever a time to fight a monster, it would be now, so Alan decides to give it a shot. Fighting will help him protect his family, and besides that, hardcore gamers never shy away from a challenge. Alan manages to land an attack on the beast, and he's immediately pushed back. He counters by summoning a bunch of Fidos, and they swarm the giant bird. Alan celebrates too soon, however, as the powerful beast destroys them. Alan takes another hit, and he notices that this attack hurt a lot more than the first one. He just now realizes that he has been losing buffs from each summon creature that the bird defeated, and it's making him weaker. This is the major drawback to being a summoner, and Alan's body's now giving up on him. The situation only gets worse as the bird goes in to end his life, and Alan wonders if this will be the end of him. Alan desperately tries to think of a way out of this situation, but the beast is ready to end his life. Just then, Alan calls on his sucker monsters, and they manage to do some damage. Alan never tested them before, but it's clear now that they have some kind of energy drain attack. Alan is a lot weaker after losing so many of his summons and their buffs, but that won't be a problem if he can keep draining the bird's energy. Alan calls on more of his monsters, and this allows him to land a direct attack. Thanks to the suckers draining its energy, Alan is able to defeat the giant bird, and Alan's grimoire reveals something amazing. Alan just defeated one albaheron, so he has gained 100 experience points for his efforts. Alan celebrates as he just defeated his first monster, and it's giving him a rush he's never felt before. Everyone back home is shocked when he brings the bird back, and they wonder what happened. Alan simply says that it landed nearby, and he was able to take it by surprise. Gerda notices that the bird has some bite marks on it, so he wonders if Alan bit the thing himself. Alan doesn't want to reveal his true powers, so he says that he must have been biting it without realizing it. Gerda tells Rodin that he will bleed it out for them, and he has Alan help him. Gerda explains that bleeding the bird cuts its weight in half, but only half of what's left will be edible. The bird's beak can be pretty valuable, and their wings should fetch a pretty penny as well. Alan listens closely, and he's just glad that Gerda is willing to teach him all this stuff. Unfortunately, they will have to pay a 60% tax for a monster of this rank. The upper class doesn't tax the lower rank monsters, but this bird is a D rank. Alan is amazed when Gerda pulls out the bird's magic core, but unfortunately, this falls under the tax as well. Gerda points out that a kid like Alan only has to hunt because Rodin got injured. However, they will be able to use this fact as leverage to negotiate a bigger cut with the chief. Just then, Alan says that he has an idea, and they go to speak with the chief. Gerda tries to tell the chief that they will give him the bird's wings as long as they can keep the rest. The chief must reject that offer because the Baron has asked for them to deliver even more meat this year. Gerda throws in the magic stone to sweeten the offer, but that still won't be enough for the Baron. This is when Alan's plan kicks in, as the two guys use guilt to convince the chief. They say that their village is starving because the great hero Rodin isn't able to go on the hunts, and Alan says that he's getting dizzy from hunger. Gerda curses this cruel world, and he wonders who's to blame for this. The chief knows that it's him, so he allows them to keep most of the bird. Alan's true intentions are then revealed, as he says that this means that they will be able to keep all the meat from now on, as long as they turn in the wings and the magic stones. Gerda points out that it would be really hard to catch another albaheron anyway, so the chief agrees. If they're lucky enough to wrangle up another one, then they can keep all the meat and just hand in the wings and the magic stones. Alan goes right back to work, and he sets up another trap. 2 albaherons arrive this time, but Alan has experience now. He gets his frogs to safety, and he immediately uses suckers to drain the birds of their energy. As they become weaker, Alan strikes them with the rock and sends a bunch of Fidos in to attack. The powerful birds try to fight back, but they're not weak enough for Alan to finish them off with his sword. Alan has been out hunting once every 3 days since beating that first bird, and this is the first time that he didn't lose any summons. It's a flawless victory, and he earns 200 experience points. This brings his total to 1,000, and this levels Alan up to level 2. Alan is delighted to see that he recovered all his HP and MP after leveling up. His stat increases are only 60% of what they should be, making him realize that he isn't getting the full benefit of his leveling up. It's probably because he's playing on hell mode, but Alan says that it's still a moment for celebration. He has leveled up, and a bunch of his stats are going up as well. It's been 6 years since coming to this world, and Alan has finally hit his first level up. This is what the people of this world call passing the trial of the gods, and it feels amazing. Alan couldn't be happier, and he wonders if now is the time to tell his family the truth. Alan returns home, and Rodin is shocked to see that he was able to capture 2 Albaherans this time. Rodin seems to notice something, but there's no time to explain because Alan remembers that he has to spar with Krenna. As Alan gets beat up, he thinks about how after today's hunt, he has met his goal of capturing 10 Albaherans. Once he dries the meat, his family will have enough to make it through the winter. The only thing left to do now is to trade for some firewood. There are a lot of Albaherans around at this time of year, so Alan figures that he could try to hit level 3 by hunting 20 more. After their battle, Alan heads home to speak with his parents. He tells them to brace themselves and reveals that he heard an oracle from God back when he was 1 year old. Alan speaks using what he imagines the god's voice would sound like, and he says that the god told him that he would bless him with power and wisdom. His parents wonder what it means, so Alan explains that it means that he's smarter and stronger than the average person. However, the god also told him that he would face trials beyond what even 100 men could accomplish. His parents feel terrible about him having to endure such trials, and Rodin realizes that Alan must have bested one of those trials earlier today. Rodin knows this because the cut Alan had on his face from fighting the first bird has disappeared. Alan's parents wonder why his appraisal ceremony went so poorly, so Alan reveals that Elmia contacted him about that as well. The reason his attributes were ranked so low is because they take the slower progression of his trials into account. And the reason it said that he didn't have a talent is because his talent was simply too new to be recognized. Rodin is delighted to hear that Alan does have a talent, but Alan tells him that he doesn't know what it is yet. Deep down, Alan can only apologize to his father because he can't say anything about being a summoner yet. Alan is worried that some people might get the wrong idea if they find out that he can summon and control creatures. Most importantly, Alan knows that he can never reveal that he was reincarnated. Theresia wishes that Alan would have told them sooner because she only now knows how hard he was working. The reason he's been throwing rocks at that tree and fighting the Albaherans is so he could overcome the trials. Rodin wonders what he will do now, so Alan explains that he wants to prove himself worthy by passing the trials. Rodin promises to help in any way he can, so Alan thanks his parents for everything. Rodin says that they should keep this all a secret, so people don't call Alan a false prophet, but he still wants to tell Gerda. Alan says it's okay, and Rodin's relieved because Gerda's always bragging about how Krenna is a sword god. A while later, Alan works hard as he prepares one of the birds he hunted. Gerda always knew that Alan was no ordinary kid, but him being blessed and tested by a god is really something special. Gerda takes Alan to trade meat for supplies for the first time, so Alan asks him to show him the ropes. Alan is bringing a bunch of the bird meat he prepared, and Gerda's bringing the meat he got from a boar hunt. Gerda says that hunting is a lot easier without commoners messing things up, so Alan wonders what is the difference between commoners and serfs. Besides their social status, commoners don't have to pay the 60% tax. Instead, they pay 3 gold coins for each adult and 1 for each kid every year. There is a way for serfs to become commoners, but they have to make a tribute of 10 gold coins per person in the family. Alan's family is about to get a new member, so they would have to pay 50 gold coins if they want to become commoners. When they arrive, Gerda declares that he's trading in 5 packs of boar meat. Alan decides to do just what he does, so he declares that he will be trading in 5 packs of Albaheran meat. The trade is a great success, and now that Alan knows how bartering works, he plans to do a bit of market research for next time. As time passes, we see that Alan is confident enough to go on these trading trips by himself. Now he's asking about the prices of all sorts of stuff and deciding what he wants. Alan thinks about how much he can get for packs of meat, and he keeps everything in his notes. A single bundle of meat can get him a bag of salt, 4 momo fruits, and 4 days worth of firewood. He has also learned a lot about the currency here, and how 1 gold coin is worth 100 silver coins. After some calculations, Alan determines that in order to save up for 50 gold coins, he would have to hunt 500 Albaherans. This would only take 2 years, and Alan says that it would be a walk in the park for a hardcore gamer like him. Afterwards, Alan goes in search of a medicine that can recover magical power. That stuff is too fancy for the local market to carry, so Alan looks for some healing medicine instead. Alan is delighted to learn that he can draw things in his grimoire just by imagining them, so he copies down what some of the medicinal herbs look like. Alan wonders where the Mueller's flower is, but their shop doesn't have that either. The shop owner explains that he only had 1 of those flowers, and he sold it to Gerda. Gerda got on his hands and knees to beg him to sell it, and he said that it was for Rodin. Gerda wouldn't leave until the owner agreed to sell it, so Alan realizes that Gerda is a really good friend. The owner lost a lot of money on the deal, so Alan shows him what he brought. The owner thinks that Alan wants to trade it to him, but he's shocked when Alan reveals that it's a gift. Alan explains that Rodin is his father, and that flower saved his life. Later, Alan stops by a weapon shop and is surprised by how expensive everything is. Dagora wonders what Alan is doing outside his father's shop, but Alan says that he was just about to leave. Unfortunately, Dagora stops him and says that he can only leave if he agrees to be his minion. Alan fights back immediately, and he can see the fear in Dagora's eyes. He tells Dagora to grab whatever weapon he wants, and he will be waiting for him in this very spot. Dagora rushes off to get his weapon, and he tells the chief's son to watch Alan. Dagora returns soon after, and he's eager to teach Alan a lesson. Unfortunately, it doesn't go well for him, as Alan easily blocks all his attacks. Alan does admit that his attacks hit pretty hard, but Dagora doesn't compare to the 3-star power of Krenna. Alan wins their battle, and he declares that he will return one day to trade at his father's shop. Later, Rodin declares that he has finally made a full recovery. The next day, Alan battles Dagora again, and he reminds the kid that he has to try and anticipate his moves. The other kids are there as well, and Alan can tell that Krenna's taking it easy on Mash as she battles him. Alan's still proud of his little brother, and he even determines that Mash might have some talent as a spear user. Just then, Dagora tries a sneak attack, but Alan makes him pay over and over again. That night, we see that Alan has another sibling named Mayula. Just then, Rodin arrives and reveals that he has bad news. The chief wants them to raise the number of boars they deliver to the Baron from 10 to 15. To make this happen, the chief expects them to let commoners join the hunt again this year. Of course, they wanted to say no because of what happened last time, but this order came directly from the Baron. If they don't deliver 15 boars by winter this year, they're going to recruit serfs from elsewhere. More serfs in this village results in less land to go around for everyone else. This means that serfs who can't hunt might have their land taken away from them. This would hurt a lot of families, and it would change the very nature of Krenna village. To make things even worse, the chief expects them to hunt 20 boars next year. The only way to make that happen is for them to hunt way more often than usual. This would be very dangerous, but serfs like them have no right to disobey the Baron's orders. Alan speaks up and points out that there will never be an end to this. Even if they do manage to hunt 20 boars, they will just keep asking for more over the years. They will eventually have to recruit more serfs, so Alan says that the better choice would be to just let the commoners join. Gerda points out that the commoners are useless in battle, but Alan says that it will just have to be their job to make them useful. Alan reminds everyone that he has wisdom that was blessed to him by Elmia, but deep down he thinks about what he really means. He has spent countless hours across numerous games, making characters as strong as they could possibly be. This means that he knows how to integrate a newbie into a party so they can safely gain the necessary experience. Alan says that he has the knowledge to do this the right way, so he tells them to let him handle this. Thanks for watching my recap. Make sure to like the video.